sent out to everyone in the next few days. I am Adair Damon. I'm the director of the Washington Labor Education and Research Center. Tonight's guests are Kris Bowen from the Employment Security Department and John Tirpak from the Unemployment Law Center. We met with ESD and the Unemployment Law Center about a month ago prior to some of the new changes in unemployment that came out of the federal legislation being implemented. Since then, we've had, I hope we'll hear from this from Kris, hundreds of thousands of Washington workers go through unemployment and unemployment application. Most of the questions we hear these days pertain to how to apply, sort of the technology and the qualifications and sort of wrestling with the system. And I hope we're going to get a chance to answer many of the questions that are coming out about that. I'm going to just move straight to the speakers now and invite Kris. I think what we would like would be a somewhat brief summary of who is currently eligible for unemployment in our state, and what's the fastest and quickest and most effective way to get your application filed and your benefits received.
Oh, well, good evening. My name is Kris Bowen, and I'm lead policy analyst for Employment Security Department. I have been with the agency for almost 20 years now, so I've been through a few recessions with the agency. So this is something that I have already experienced. So who is currently eligible for unemployment insurance? So regular unemployment benefits are available to anybody who has worked in employment that is covered by unemployment insurance for at least 680 hours during their base year. And someone's base year is the first 4 of the last 5 completed quarters. And that would be for employment that has been reported during that time period. So if you were to file a claim today, your claim base year would be all of 2019. If you don't qualify with 680 hours during that time period, we do shift it 1 quarter and use the last 4 quarters. So if you were filing an alternate base year, it would be the 2nd quarter of 2019 through March 31st of 2020. The wages that can be used and the hours that can be used to establish an unemployment claim don't have to all be in Washington. If you worked in multiple states, you can bring over your wages from the other states. You just file what's called a combined wage claim, or a CWC. And that will include, we will reach out to the other states to include your wages and hours that you had from the other states to combine them into 1 claim here in Washington. You can file a combined wage claim in any state that you did work during the base year. There are eligibility requirements to continue to receive unemployment benefits. Those requirements include being able and available for work, actively seeking work, and having a qualifying reason for your separation from work. Claimants are asked on a weekly basis to verify that they continue to qualify for UI when they file their weekly claims. And you have to file a weekly claim in order to get any payments. If you don't meet 1 or more of the requirements each week, you could be denied benefits for the week, or depending on the issue, it could be longer than that. There are some adjustments that have been made throughout the pandemic. The governor's stay home, stay healthy order, while that is in place, job search is optional. Once that order is lifted, everybody will again need to search for work unless they are on standby with their employer. So the way that this will work is when the order is lifted, if you are planning to still return to work with your employer, or your employer is planning on having you come back to work with them, but not at the time the order is lifted, you can request standby. And basically what that means is you have to be available for work for your employer when they're ready to call you back. So you have to maintain contact with your employer, arrange when you're going to be coming back, but during that time you don't have to be searching for work. In the emergency rules, we've also increased the number of weeks available for standby from 8 per claim year to 12 for the claim year. In order to qualify for standby, you would have to have a probable return to work date. But right now, you don't need to have standby until the order is lifted. We've tied the work search to Governor Inslee's stay home, stay healthy order. So that's not necessary right now to file for standby. If you're not eligible for a regular UI claim, you might qualify for one of the federal programs that is part of the CARES Act. So for example, if you exhausted all of your benefits already on your unemployment claim, there is an extension available of 13 weeks on top of your unexpired unemployment claim. If you are not eligible for a new claim, those 13 weeks can overlap what would have been overlap past your benefit year expiration date. If you are not eligible for an unemployment claim in any way, shape, or form, let's say you've only worked in self-employment, and you have not worked for an employer during the base year at all, you might qualify for another one of the federal programs called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA. That basically allows people who have not worked for an employer or had qualifying wages to be potentially eligible for unemployment under that assistance. The catch to that is you have to be unemployed for one of the very specific reasons related to COVID. So for example, it could be you've been diagnosed with COVID, or a family member in your household or a member of your household has been diagnosed, or you're immune compromised, or maybe the school's closed, or you don't have daycare because of the governor's orders to stay closed. So some of those are reasons, well, those are some of the reasons that you might qualify under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. In addition to regular UI and PUA and the extension, the Federal CARES Act also added $600 to each week's benefit amount, as long as the underlying payment you're eligible for is at least $1. So if you continue to work while you are collecting unemployment, working part-time, for example, we do reduce your weekly benefit amount based on your earnings. There's a formula that's available on, and there's an earnings chart that's available on our website that you can use to figure that out. But you have to be eligible for at least $1 of regular unemployment benefits, or extension benefits, or the PUA benefits in order to receive that $600. And that's available through July 25th. As far as how to apply for unemployment benefits, the fastest way is going to be to use our e-services online portal to be able to access the application. The phone lines right now, they are rather busy, and they have been since the beginning of March, because everybody's trying to get in there. And I do like our commissioner's description of the whole offensive line of the Seahawks trying to get through one little door, which is how it's kind of been with everybody trying to get on into the phone system to talk to somebody. But the fastest way is going to be to go ahead and go online, and you can get to the online portal at esd.wa.gov and sign in with your Secure Access Washington account. The Secure Access Washington account is something that you can set up, and it lets you access all of the state agencies with one sign-in. So if you have an account set up for Department of Licensing or Department of Revenue, you can usually use that same account to sign in to unemployment. So once you sign into the e-services, then you can file your application, you can manage your UI account or your PUA account. You can file your weekly claims, you can ask questions, you can do a number of things in e-services. And that's going to be the best way to access our services. You can access e-services anytime, 24/7. If you're one of those night birds, you can stay up late and go online and file your application, or if you like to get up early, you can do it then too. They have extended the hours for our claims center, so telephones are available, agents are available by phone from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Normally it's 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, but we have added an extra day and an extra hour each of those days. So it is better to try calling, if you're going to try calling the claim center, to call first thing in the morning or somewhere around lunchtime. Those are generally the best times to get in, but there are long waits because, as I said, everybody's trying to get in touch with us all at the same time.
All right. We have many questions. I think before we turn to John, I think I would like to ask a couple questions. First of all, how many total applications or how many total new unemployed Washingtonians have we had in the last 6 weeks?
Oh, in the last 6 weeks?
Yeah.
I really don't have that number. I know that they sent out the number for last week earlier today, and I don't really have that handy because I wasn't expecting that question.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
No, I know the scale of the work that you are trying to accomplish in a
Mm-hmm.
compressed time frame is huge.
Yes.
I think we all understand that, and it's really scary and frightening for people who are having difficulties getting through.
Yes.
I think we're going to circle back to some of the problems getting through. Mm-hmm. It is true and important, however, that even if you're having a hard time getting through, benefits are retroactive to the date of eligibility, correct?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. We stress with our family and friends who are frightened and frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you have had trouble getting in, if you talk to an agent, you can request to backdate your claim to the time where you actually would have been eligible for benefits, and you can do the same thing if you file online.
Okay. I think I'm going to ask John, who has been dealing with enormous numbers of the issues that flow through our community, as many of us have among our family and friends. John, what would you say is the number one question you get from the public about our current situation?
Well, the big problem isn't really a legal issue in terms of people being eligible. There are new good rules now to include more people. It's access for applications. We received thousands of phone calls in the last couple of weeks, and I would say most of them are about, I've been claiming for 5 weeks and I can't get an answer, or I can't get through the 800 number, I don't have a computer. Problems with people with language barriers who, if you can apply online in Spanish and in English, but the 800 number is option for others. So and of course that's hard to get through. So a lot of it's access, and a lot of it's, asking about, should I reapply? I applied once in March and I've been denied, but I was told not to reapply again, but now I'm told I should apply. And should I just apply for regular, or should I apply for everything? That's like the most common confusion, because we have people who...
Well, let's take a minute there.
Sure, okay.
Let's answer that one. If I applied in March, and then new federal benefits came online, correct? Mm-hmm. I was told once, don't apply again because I was denied. Now it looks like I really should under the new federal rules, under the PUA, right? Should I apply again? That's Kris, what's the answer on that one?
So in order to be eligible for PUA, you have to have been ineligible for regular UI. So if you filed in March and you were actually denied or ineligible, I'll say that, which means you didn't have at least 680 hours in your base year, or you were disqualified for some reason, you could potentially apply, be eligible for PUA. So that is a separate application, and that may be where the confusion is coming, because you first have to apply for UI and be disqualified or ineligible before you can actually file for pandemic unemployment assistance. And that's you fill out the new application and it'll ask similar questions, but some of them are different.
Mhm. And I believe I have seen on the ESD website a new to me, since I last looked, the eligibility checker, a simple PDF eligibility checker, simple questions, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And Kris, we have a listener asking us to make sure that we stay away from acronyms and make sure that we are communicating clearly about the different programs and resources we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my whole life is acronyms.
I know, all of our lives. Okay, so then let's, the next question I will ask, John has raised. Is there a solution for someone who does not have a computer and is not tech savvy right now, and the phone lines are swamped? What is the best thing we can say to people out there?
Keep trying to call. The options are online or talking to an agent. We have expanded the phone lines for availability of the phones. We've also hired a lot more people to help triage some of the calls as they come in, but you know, the demand is much higher than our capacity. So just keep trying. I know that's not what people want to hear, but if that's the only way that they can get their claim filed, they're going to have to keep trying.
I've had some success. Some people have called their state senators and state representatives, and a few people have let me know that helped provide access. I'm not sure exactly how or who called who or who intervened, but you know, your state senator and state representative may have a contact.
I have a message for every union steward out there. We have learned over a long period of time how to help people navigate the rules and regulations of their work sites. And it is now on us, I believe, to help our coworkers navigate computer access where we can help and advise and coach, and other aspects of this unemployment situation. So a lot of what we hope tonight is that stewards and activists can take this information to their colleagues and their coworkers. Let's see. John, do you have another favorite question that has come to you from the people that you've been working with, or should we move to the questions that have come in from our audience?
I have two I'd like to bring up tonight. I think that might be helpful for many people. Mm-hmm. This week, I had a few calls from people who lost their unemployment hearing. Like, you know, people, let's say last year they got fired and it turned out not too well for them in their hearing, or they never appealed it, or they quit and it wasn't considered, a good enough reason. And so perhaps they haven't even worked since then. Maybe it was last October, November. The question this week is, well, can I apply now? You know, because they're saying, I thought my claim was dead. I lost all my appeals. Can I apply now? So that's one question I've been getting. And then the other one is concern about making too much money, which is kind of, this is a problem for people. It's kind of a heartbreaking question. Let's say somebody's base unemployment was 300 a week and they'd been getting 300 and then that's 600. So they're getting 900. So then their employer calls them back part-time and now they're going to make 400 a week. So they were getting 900. Now their employer calls them back and is going to pay them 400. That 400, does that 400 kick them out of the whole system because they are that 400 a week is more than the 300 of their normal claim, and if that's more than their normal claim, then that kicks them off the 600. So that's a question we've been getting a lot of.
So let's help people with that, because I've been hearing the same question. People who have reduced hours, who are either sent away with reduced hours or being brought back with reduced hours. So they are neither fully employed nor unemployed. They're now somewhere in the middle. Can we have some clarity about, from either John or Kris, what is the bet? Does our system accommodate that? And what do they need to do to make sure that they don't lose their benefits?
I can take this one. In order to qualify for the additional $600, you have to be eligible for at least $1 of underlying benefits. So regular unemployment or pandemic unemployment assistance or the extension. When you do work during a week, we do have to reduce your unemployment weekly benefit amount by the earnings that you have. And basically the formula is the earnings that you make, the gross earnings that you make, subtract $5 and multiply it by 75%. And that amount is what gets reduced from your weekly benefit amount. So as long as that deduction leaves you with at least $1 of benefits, you can qualify to still get the additional $600. If it doesn't, then you're not eligible for anything for that week.
Okay, so there's a sliding scale reduction to your state benefit, but the $600 benefit is solid and not touched as long as you are receiving some state benefit.
Yes, at least $1.
Okay, good.
Then my question about if you had a failed claim, let's say last year or a few months ago, should you reapply or should you apply for other programs?
So sometimes we do have denials that happen on previous claims or earlier in an existing claim. Claim years are good for 52 weeks from the date from the week they were filed. So if you have an unexpired unemployment claim, but you have a disqualification on there that you can't requalify for because you have not returned to work, and haven't made any earnings, you may be able to move over onto the pandemic unemployment assistance. Basically, on regular UI claims or unemployment insurance claims, you have to meet all of the eligibility requirements. But if you are denied for any one of the eligibility requirements, it makes you not qualified for your unemployment claim. So you can apply for the pandemic unemployment as long as you meet one of the COVID-related reasons. If you do not, you probably would not be eligible for unemployment benefits during at this time. You can't file a new claim if you already have an unexpired claim open, regardless of whether there's benefits left on it or whether you just can't access those benefits. So you have to wait until your claim year is over, and then you would have to see if you qualify for a new unemployment claim. But for separations and job refusals, if you have not returned to work and had additional earnings after the separation from that job, you may not be eligible for unemployment. You may not qualify.
Okay. I think I'm going to go to a couple of questions from our community out here. We have several. We have, over the past couple of weeks, as we were collecting questions for tonight's meeting, we heard a lot of questions from people who are non-regular employees, not full-time, works part-time jobs, gig workers, contractors, who are finding it complicated to file their claim and know how to answer certain questions. There's a whole score of them. And I thought I'm going to make an effort to invite one of our callers to speak up. Let's see if I can do that. I don't think I can do that. I think I will skip that. I'm going to ask the question on behalf of the musicians in Spokane, Washington. They have reported to me that they can in a year have more than a dozen separate 1099s. They work gigs and events of all kinds and may also have a stable job somewhere in there for the symphony, for another entity. So they have kind of a whole bunch of pieces of income that collapsed. And yet they're having a hard time figuring out how to put together the qualifying information. So please speak to the question of people with multiple separated income sources, all of which have collapsed. How do they go about proving eligibility?
So as I mentioned before, you have to attempt to be eligible for regular unemployment first. And generally, for regular unemployment, employers will report their hours and wages to us, and those will be on record. There are some occupations that, even though they get paid a 1099 at the end of the year, they still might be considered employees, and sometimes we have to look at that information to see if they can be paid regular unemployment benefits rather than to see if they can reach 680 hours in order to have a valid unemployment claim. So if it turns out that there is absolutely no way that they can hit the 680 hours based on already reported unemployment wages, maybe non-covered employment that the employers don't pay unemployment taxes on, and any self-employment, including 1099 workers, they might be eligible for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which doesn't have an hour requirement. It's based on the tax year 2019. And so in order to establish what the weekly benefit amount they would be eligible for, we would need to have qualifying documents in order to be provided so that we can show proof of the income that was made during 2019. And 1099s count. There's actually a list on our website, which I'm trying to access. See if I can get you a quick answer for that. I will find it and I'll send you the link. But there is a list of acceptable documents that can be used in order to establish what the income, the proof of income is for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance claim. And so that would end up qualifying them for an unemployment claim. Basically, what happens when you file for that type of a claim, everybody is paid the minimum until we can verify documents showing the proof of income.
Okay, I understand that we've opened up Rachel's mic. Rachel, has that answered your question so far?
Actually, I'm just concerned that there are some workers falling through the cracks, that they may be, for instance, many of our musicians are still teaching lessons. They're just doing it virtually through Zoom. And so they're making just enough money so that they make more than their state benefit. Then they kick themselves off the PUA benefit as well as the EUI. But they're not making enough money to support their families because they've lost 50 to 60% of their income. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done about that.
No, our deductions are set in state law. So that formula that I mentioned earlier, that is set up in state law. And so if you are working and you have earnings, you do need to report that each week. And if the earnings end up being deducted, the earnings that need to be deducted are greater than the weekly benefit amount, unfortunately, you would not be eligible for benefits for that week.
Do you mind if I ask one more question?
Please do.
I don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
The other issue that I'm seeing a lot of our members have is that they've been receiving pension and then they were getting denied because of a lack of information when they actually submitted all the information. Do you know why that might be happening?
Well, pensions and retirement pay is deductible from weekly benefit amount, just as if you were earning, working and had earnings, it is deductible from your unemployment. So depending on how much the pension deduction is, it may be the same scenario as the earnings deduction, where it just uses up all of the weekly benefit amount. Basically, for pensions, what happens is we only deduct the employer's contribution for to each claimant, and it has to be an employer that was in the claimant's base year in order for us to reduce by the pension.
Okay,
so it has to be
we have like a multi-employer pension fund.
Okay.
So it's not it doesn't really follow the thing that you're describing. And also these aren't huge amounts of money. It's maybe like, I think the person who's making the most from it gets about $500 a month.
Okay.
So
it's any employer that may have contributed to that fund that they worked for in their base year. So if I think you mentioned the symphony before, if they worked for the symphony and then also worked for the ballet, if one of those contributed to the pension plan, then that would be deductible from their weekly benefit amount. So the amount is based on the percentage that the employers contributed versus how much the claimants contributed to their own retirement fund. And we only reduce the weekly benefit amount based on the employer's contribution. Now, I think you mentioned something about not providing documentation.
Yes.
When we set an issue on a claim, we send out questionnaires either by mail or by e-services, depending on the claimant's preference, when they set up their e-services account or when they set up their claim. If we do not get paperwork back by the due date, the system is set up to automatically deny those benefits. So if the paperwork wasn't received in time, it may presumptively deny those benefits, but when we do receive the paperwork, we will go through and we'll redetermine those issues.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
So these people all submitted their stuff in time and I think got an automatic denial because probably the system is overloaded. So I can tell them then that they can expect to hear from the ESD?
Yes.
Okay.
And we will, if they got a denial letter in the mail or on e-services, when we do redetermine those issues, we will send out a new letter that says what it's for. If there's still a denial in place to reduce the weekly benefit amount by the retirement, it'll just say this is, your retirement is being reduced by this amount. But then they would get any supplemental checks for weeks that they were eligible for benefits minus the reduced amount.
Right. Excellent. Okay. One thing.
Pension.
Wait, Rachel, I would like to move on to next question. John sounds.
I would like to add something on the pensions. The pension deduction has never made any sense because it's based on past earnings, and it kind of goes against the logic of reporting income when it's earned in the week. And it's posed a lot of problems in this current crisis because not only is it making people ineligible for all their benefits in some cases, but the way the question is and the way it is, I've talked to dozens of people who checked yes to are you receiving a pension when they are in fact are not, because they interpreted the question as do you have a pension. Well, it turns out they don't even have a pension, they have a 401k.
Mhm.
And the problem with this is, and I've talked to many people about this for weeks, is that when they try to correct it, they can't. And I've advised them to request hearings. Our office represents people at hearings, but it's one of the problems with this period of something that could easily be corrected can't be corrected, and it may end up in a hearing a month or two from now, and this person is meanwhile without any income. And it's problematic because there's not a portal I can send people to really to solve these issues. Often the response when I try is, well, the person should just call the 800 number.
Let me ask, there actually is a question in the chat box about exactly the question of how do I fix a mistake I made on my application? I fixed it going forward. Is there a way to fix it from the first couple weeks when I filled something out wrong?
I would say the best thing to do is respond to the questionnaires that are sent out to you. Because as I mentioned, if you don't respond to the questionnaires, the system will automatically deny. So you want to make sure that you're watching for questionnaires, you're checking your e-services account, and if there's any alerts on there that says we need additional information from you, please answer those, because if you don't, then you are risking a denial
But the
up
problem
front.
is, people who've filled things out, they've given information, maybe they've given their weekly claim and they were not sure how to report their self-employment income, and now they want to correct it. Now they have more information. These are the people having problems. It's not the initial applications, it's the correction. And I've told people over and over, send messages, try, and they say, I've sent many messages for weeks, up to 5-6 weeks, and I have not heard back. And also they try the 800 number, and that hasn't worked either. So the correction issue, again, back to the pension issue, that's been a problem, again, with people who misread that question
I'm glad you brought that
4
up,
or 5
though.
weeks ago.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, John, because we are working on rewording that question to make it a little bit easier to understand, because you're exactly right. People are answering that question incorrectly because they misunderstand what we're trying to get to. Basically, all we're trying to get to is, are you receiving any retirement pay from as a pension or a 401k from this employer? When they're reading it as, are you contributing to, or do you have one of these? So yes, we are working on rewording that question along with several others to try to make them a little bit more understandable for claimants.
I've talked to, this is a serious issue. I talked to 2 people this week who emptied out their 401ks so that they could become eligible for unemployment.
Oh no.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very serious problem.
Right.
And if you can address it quickly, that would be good. I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of young people who have, drained their entire retirement fund now over this issue.
There are so many people trying to navigate the system right now for the first time, and so many of the questions we've gotten have to do with the complications of understanding what applies to me. I'd like to bring you probably a couple simpler ones, I hope. Can someone be eligible for the 13-week extension if their benefit exhausted in 2019 and now in the workforce but unemployed and unemployable due to the COVID shutdown?
So that kind of depends on when in 2019 their claim expired. So I'm exhausted, I apologize. So if their claim expired after July 1st of 2019 and they still don't qualify for a new claim because they don't have enough hours, for example, they can be eligible for the extension. Now, the first week that the extension can pay for is the week that ended on April 4th. So any weeks between when their claim exhausted and April 4th would not be payable under the extension, but from April 4th forward, it would be. There is a lag though, because we didn't get the system updated until Saturday, April 18th. So people weren't able to apply for the extensions or for pandemic unemployment assistance. I'm trying not to use acronyms, I promise. So they weren't able to apply for those programs until after we had the system upgraded. So there was a lag in benefits, and so any claim that they had that has been exhausted, they're not eligible for a new claim, they would first go to the extension, and then if they're not eligible for the extension, they go to the pandemic unemployment assistance.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good. That's good information. Another question about someone with a mixed set of income. They are a part-time regular worker with an employer and they are not working. The bulk of their income comes from self-employment and some gig work, which is also collapsed. Which route should they be using? The bulk of their income is from their gig work and self-employment. Which route should they be using to apply, or which program should they be applying to?
Everybody has to first apply for unemployment insurance, regular unemployment insurance, period. They have to show that they're not eligible for a regular claim, and that's in federal law. Okay. So if their part-time employment gives them at least 680 hours, then they have to be using their regular unemployment claim. Now, if they don't have it 680 hours, or they don't otherwise qualify for a regular unemployment claim, they could potentially be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance.
Okay, thank you.
And in that particular program, that's where they get to add their self-employment income.
There have been several requests for you to please restate the formula, how much of your benefit is discounted by income.
Okay.
75% formula.
You take your gross earnings, subtract $5, and multiply the rest by 75%.
Can you say that again?
Gross earnings minus $5 times 75%. And then you round it up to the next whole dollar. And that is what's reduced from your weekly benefit amount.
That's great. So that means you get to keep some of the money you're making. Mm-hmm. You will lose some of your benefit, but you will come out ahead if you have returned to work. Okay, I think we have time for about one or two more questions. I'm going to look for something that is... There are a number of situations of people who have moved from one situation to another during the course of the last several months. I heard a long story, which I won't reiterate, of someone who had to leave the state on leave, on family medical leave for even perhaps a non-COVID related item, came back to state after the shutdown. How do they figure out the date of the incident? What's the accurate way for them to complete a claim? Does that make sense?
I'm trying to figure out if I understand the question. So when COVID hit, they were out of state?
Take that as an example. I don't know if that's an exact person's situation, but someone moving from a leave without pay to a family medical leave, mm-hmm. into I'm back at home now, mm-hmm. and emerging into my COVID related stay at home period.
Okay, so first off, regular UI has to be looked at. If that is not an option, so they have to have been, the reason that they cannot work has to be directly related to the COVID reason. So if they had to leave prior to COVID, leave employment, leave the state or whatever, and this was prior to COVID, COVID is not the reason for them being unemployed.
Mhm.
So they may not be eligible under the pandemic unemployment assistance.
But when they come back into the state, are no longer on family leave, they are ready and willing and able to go to work, except they're home on a COVID shutdown.
That could qualify them, potentially, yes.
Yeah. We're getting so many questions of that type that are slightly complicated. The dates are slightly, people are bouncing, people have lives, have a multiple set of things going on that are impacting their ability to be at work.
And it's really hard to give a blanket answer because there are so many variables in everybody's case. So, I mean, we do the best that we can to give general answers, but we would usually have to just look at the facts of each case.
Okay, I'm looking for one more. If anybody has a question that is burning that has not been answered, please put it in the chat for us. Yes. An acknowledgement from all of us that the work of the ESD intake workers is backbreaking right now. We appreciate how hard it must be for you all to process all the incoming. And while the frustrations of the people trying to make claims are real, the work and the gift to our community of the people who are processing those claims is real as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will pass that on.
Let's see, coming in off of the questions. There's a question, let's see, I'm trying to think here. An essential worker who has been on self-quarantine since April with a doctor's note is on unemployment. Medical leave will run out at the end of June. Can I get into the CARES Act FMLA?
Since that is not run by the Employment Security Department, I am not the qualified person to answer that.
Okay, thank you. We did have a full webinar on the interactions between unemployment, the state paid leave, federal family medical leave. A couple of weeks ago, we have recordings of that webinar available, and we will send out a link to all of our recordings so you can check and see if that question was answered. Let's see. I guess it is about time to ask our panelists if you have anything closing that you want to offer to our community here. Closing messages?
Well, just reiterate, the Unemployment Law Project, we have a website. We try to answer all the calls live, but of course we get much voicemail, so it may take a day or so to call back, but we are taking messages and returning calls. We are offering advice and representation at hearings and further appeals. You know, I would encourage people to not give up and to appeal cases if they are denied, and to try your best to call back that 800 number, but otherwise contact your state representatives, and that may be a way to get help or get your claim processed. We expect there to be an increase of hearings in the next few months because of all the issues going on, but And so we will be there for help.
I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit. Is if you do end up filing an appeal on an issue that has been denied, we will first look at that as an agency to see if we can fix it before we send it off to appeals. So if we can actually fix it, we will definitely do that, and we will redetermine that issue. So that is a good course to follow. File an appeal, and we will look at it. As far as my closing information, I know it's tedious to hear. Keep trying to call if you have questions, but sending us messages through e-services, calling is probably the best way to eventually get through to us. And I apologize that it's so busy, but there are many, many people like you trying to get into the system. And so we're trying as best we can to accommodate as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to close with the last and very, very important message that we at the Labor Center and we in the labor community know that immigrant workers are having an extraordinarily hard time accessing resources in this time of the pandemic. We have listed in the chat some of the allied organizations that are working on behalf of immigrant workers. We know that there are efforts afoot to open up new benefit opportunities for immigrant workers. There is advocacy going on in the community. Please click on the link over there, write down the phone number, access those resources as well, because it's a whole world of working people that we can't address through this particular webinar.
Adair, can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
We have a ability to do scheduled callbacks. So if somebody contacts us and they have a specific question, we schedule callbacks for people. We're finding that a lot of people are not answering their phones when we call them. So if I can say one important thing is make sure that if your phone rings, please answer it, because then if you don't answer it, we can't talk to you to help you with your problem, and then you'll have to call back and schedule another call back. And it is taking a while to get these callbacks scheduled. So please, please, please answer your phones.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kris. And again, thank you to the people at ESD who are struggling to implement a complicated patchwork of regulations. It is confusing to workers. It is also confusing to those who are trying to implement a mix of federal and state and special emergency guidelines. It can be complicated. My plea is to the stewards that I've been training for many years of my life. Again, all the more reason why we should take the skills we have developed in helping our coworkers navigate complication and turn to this project. Reach out and help someone. Reach out who has language access difficulties. Reach out to someone who is having trouble wrestling with their computer. Reach out to someone who has never in their life tried to figure out how to apply to anything online at the state of Washington. People need encouragement and support. There are benefits available to people if we can help link our community to them. It's not seamless. It's critically important that we get those benefits in the hands of families who need them. Let's see, we have listed all of the organizations that you have heard from tonight in the chat. And we have listed other outside organizations that are advocating for rights of workers in our community, and in particular for rights around unemployment, starting of course with John Tirpak's organization, the Unemployment Law Project, and including many organizations focusing on the needs of immigrant workers, non-citizens, language access, difficulties in our community. And please, and of course, always reach out to your union if you have one, to the State Labor Council, and to other labor organizations for help navigating what can be a complicated system. We have one more meeting in the series, in this current series. As people are beginning to look to the longer term future, we have heard from workers who have started considering the options that this might be a good time to look at training or retraining or career change or taking the opportunity of a stay-at-home period to do some studies and enhance their resume. That's going to be the topic of next week's meeting. There are many training opportunities in our community, and there are some public funds available to support retraining of dislocated workers. We're going to hear all about that next week. After that, by popular demand, we are putting together a series related to the issues we are going to face when we go back to the workplace. We read a lot about the CDC regulations, the governor's regulations, our unions, hard work and advocacy, our employers' worksite safety rules. How do we put it all together and know how to keep ourselves safe at work? We have a lot of lessons to learn from essential workers who've been fighting this fight already, and we have an opportunity to prepare for our own return to work. We have not scheduled the date for that, but if you are on tonight's call, you will receive notification about that in the future. And having said that, reach out to each other, send us questions that need answers, take care of each other, be safe, and we hope to see you again at a meeting soon. Thank you, everyone.